The unbelievable 21 highest bounties in One Piece.
Individuals in One Piece. And we're not just talking about pirates and revolutionaries here, no, we are combining both bounty systems, which are the wanted criminal bounties issued by the world government that target pirates and revolutionaries, as well as the cross-guild bounty system which exclusively targets marines. Because these days, no one is safe in the One Piece world. And to kick things off, worth exactly 1 billion berries each are two very legendary men, being Jack the Drought and the marine extraordinaire Spartan. Who's Spartan, you ask? Well, don't worry, we'll get to him. But firstly, Jack the Drought is a pirate who once held the title of largest known bounty in One Piece by a wide margin, because when he was first introduced on Zoro, Jack's 1 billion made the previous highest known bounty of Ace at 550 million feel woefully insignificant.
Damn.
However, these days, because he's at the beginning of this video, it's definitely Jack who feels rather insignificant. And as for Spartan, he's one of the most recent entries into the Billion Berry Club, as he is a legendary marine who has only appeared in one panel in the series, which was when the cross-guild bounty system was first introduced in chapter 1056. A marine named Spartan appears on a wanted poster, and he is assigned 1 crown, which equates to 1 billion berries. Cross-guild have a flat bounty system where marines are assigned numbers by rank, except in the case of special marines. And Spartan classifies as one of those special marines, because a single crown is not assigned to any individual rank, meaning that this is a man who's made a name for himself and who has commanded the attention of Cross-Guild. We have never met this man, we may never meet this man, but this is a reminder of just how incomprehensibly big the One Piece world is. The idea that there's any number of miscellaneous big shot pirates and marines sailing this world that we just didn't explore extensively enough to find. And they're people that maybe we now should find, because they're worth almost as much as the Straw Hat's very own Vinsmoke Sanji, who is worth an insane 1,032 million berries.
What the
This was
fuck?
acquired after defeating Queen during the raid on Onigashima.
Okay, I already know Luffy probably gonna have the highest fucking bounty in the damn show. Whoever that O'Hara guy was, he was glazing the shit out of Shanks. So now I'm thinking Shanks got a high ass bounty. Maybe the highest bounty.
And it's an increase of 702 million berries over his last bounty of 330 million, which shows that the Marines consider Sanji to be particularly dangerous, because after the raid, most Straw Hat crew members got a flat 300 million increase. Not Sanji though, he was one of the very special few that got given a drastically increased number. And part of this is probably also because they know that Sanji is the biological son of Vinsmoke Judge, and his Germa Kingdom have recently rebelled against the world government. But the number itself is also a reference to Sanji's name, as 3 and 2 can be said as Sanji using Goroase in Japanese, which is again reflected in his birthday March 2nd, which again can be said as Sanji. Meanwhile, the next most valuable man in the world is Charlotte Katakuri, sitting at another staggering number of 1,057 million.
Bro.
Katakuri, of course, has the honor of being the first person that Luffy both fought and defeated with a bounty over 1 billion berries. Quite poignant, as Katakuri's bounty is specifically engineered to show superiority over Luffy. When Luffy fought Katakuri in the Mirror Realm, one of the major themes of the fight was showing Luffy up against someone who could do everything he could but better, and hence why Katakuri has a 57 in his bounty, because Luffy's trademark number is 56, so Katakuri was just that one better. I say was because Luffy has since gone on to completely knock his mochi socks off. And he's not the only Straw Hat either, because former Warlord of the Sea and current Straw Hat helmsman Jinbei sits slightly above Katakuri at 1.1 billion berries, a rather stunning increase from his previous 438 million, but this is the result of having a much more longer and more notorious career than his fellow crewmates. Jinbei is 2 decades older than most of the crew, and he was once the right-hand man of Fisher Tiger, who after Goldie Roger and before Monkey D. Dragon was known as the world's most infamous criminal. And as
Bro, so this motherfucker Arlong gotta be the most shittiest fishman ever, bro. It seemed like to me, all these other fishmen in this damn One Piece is way stronger than him.
mentioned before, he was also once a Warlord of the Sea and affiliated with an Emperor of the Sea, Charlotte Lin. So it's his deep ties and extensive career that have made the world government take him this seriously. And seriously is how I haven't been taking my Christmas obligations this year, as December is almost halfway done and I still don't have a gift for me mum.
Bruh.
Last year my gift giving was so bad that my mother threatened to take me out of the will, and I think she may have. But the solution to my problem is the sponsor of today's video, Holzkern, and their Slightly above him, a mere 11 million berries higher than Jinbei, is Straw Hat Swordsman Roanoa Zoro. The second most valuable.
Wait, what?
It's back to you, me. But sitting slightly above him, a mere 11 million berries higher than Jinbei, is Straw Hat Swordsman Roanoa Zoro. The second most valuable member of the crew, and a number that was attained after beating King during the raid on Onigashima. Although Zoro has been on the world government radar for quite some time, longer than Luffy in fact, because Zoro was actually a famous local pirate hunter before becoming a pirate himself. In fact, he's so notorious that to this very day, more people fear him by reputation than they do Luffy. Like Sanji, Zoro's bounty is also a reference.
Boy, Zoro just a goat like that, bro.
1 or 11/11, 11th of November. And when this bounty was revealed, Japan was in shock and awe, not because of how throbbingly large Zoro's number was, but because it was actually misprinted in that edition of Weekly Shonen Jump, and reported that his bounty had been changed to 1,111,000 berries, which would actually make him the third lowest bounty in the entire series. Not that Zoro has any problem being in low places. In fact, it's recently become his newfound resolution to become the ruler of the lowest of the low locations as the King of Hell. But any respectful King of Hell needs a bride. Next up, we have the perfect queen, with a body packed full of science and a brain packed full of
NEWBIE's gotta be low as shit. But she gotta have like a damn 400,000 bounty. Usopp, I get that nigga like a 900,000. Bro, all them motherfuckers gotta be low as shit.
thoughts. This queen commands a 1.32 billion berry bounty, and a large part of this is because of his affiliation to Mads, an ex-group of notorious scientists who developed cloning and devil fruit recreation among other things. And among those other things, that as I just said, were a range of extremely deadly plagues, which is Queen's particular area of interest. And if he so chose, Queen could decimate any given island with his hobby viruses, which definitely earns him a place in the Billion Berry Club, but in addition to that, he's just insanely strong and a very chonksome threat to global stability on every level. He's also a dinosaur, which is pretty cool. As our phoenixes, with 1st Division Commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, Marco, weighing in at 1.374 billion berries. A very high number, likely because he was once the right-hand bird of the strongest man in the world. But Marco would almost certainly be in the 2 billion mark at least if he'd won the Payback War and kept the Whitebeard Pirates together as an Emperor of the Sea. Like many characters though, Marco's exact number is more of a pun than a precise indicator of threat, as the 74 in his number can be said as nashi, meaning pear. However, pineapple is written in Japanese with the kanji for both phoenix and pear, so pineapple in Japanese sounds beyond awesome because it's a phoenix pear, and this has been noted as visual pun all along, as Marco is a phoenix with a pineapple for a head. And Marco is more or less
Bro, this motherfucker be deep diving into One Piece, bro.
equal to Kaido's right-hand bird King, who commands 1.39 billion units of your attention. Damn. And at this stage, you might be thinking, hey man on the internet, something's a bit wrong here, because both King and Queen have higher bounties than Zoro and Sanji. Who defeated them? Why is this for? Well, there is a solid logic to this. As with Queen, we've explored that his scientific knowledge bumps him up as a general threat, but for King, that bump
bro, that motherfucker looks so ass, bro. You said Chopper was 1,000?
He's the only known member of the Lunarian race still remaining in the One Piece world. The Lunarians are an ancient people who were said to live atop the Red Line before something mass slaughter, and now the world nobles live up there and the Lunarians don't live in general. With the sole exception of King, kind of. The Seraphim use King's Lunarian DNA as part of their makeup, but King himself is considered to be more of a danger to the world government simply because of what he is, and they're willing to pay that much extra simply to rid Lunarians from the world completely. And they're also willing to pay a small fortune for former Warlord of the Sea Boa Hancock, Empress of Amazon Lily, and carrier of a 1.659 billion berries.
Damn, they all just in a billion.
This is especially a crazy number because when we first met Boa Hancock, her bounty was 80 million berries. Granted, it was frozen because she became a warlord at a very young age, but not a whole lot has really changed since then. Especially because Boa Hancock, unlike most former warlords, didn't have any open hostilities with the world government prior to the warlord dissolution. She really was just minding her own business, but a key reason for this high price is her devil fruit. Boa Hancock uses the Mero Mero no Mi, an ability that can petrify anyone who has a strong feeling about its user, which in Hancock's case is generally lust. And the key thing about this is that it is completely unblockable. Even with Haki, you try to use it, doesn't work. And there aren't many, if any, other devil fruits that completely bypass Haki. And it's a devil fruit so powersome that Blackbeard started a war with Amazon Lily in an attempt to claim it. Although Hancock's exact berry number again comes from Gorowase, as 659 is a reference to her name, Hakkoku, which is about as close as you can get to writing Hancock using purely Japanese numbers. Sometimes with stuff like this,
bro, that motherfucker and Robin look damn near the same, bro.
Because if the Gorowase for Hancock started with a 1 or a 2, then that's what her bounty would end up being, potentially a whole 500 million berries lower, just based on number puns. And we have a similar situation happening with Hancock's fellow former warlord Sir Crocodile, whose 1.965 billion berry bounty contains the word Kuroko with the 956 doing its absolute best to write the word
that motherfucker got his ass whooped way back, bro.
Crocodile. So you can, and I guess I will, make the argument that Crocodile had almost a whole extra billion berries added to his bounty simply because we wanted to spell out the word crocodile. However, what the 1 billion part of his bounty says is that the world government respects Crocodile's intelligence. It's not just because of his personal fight battling power. In fact, it's probably not that at all. I mean, it's all right, but realistically, it's quite lacking compared to most people on this list. But it's because Crocodile has the ability and resources to put together complex, efficient organizations like Baroque Works and Cross Guild that come close to rivaling structures like Emperors of the Sea and causing far more problems for the world government than your average and you know what, even your exceptional fictional pirates. And speaking of exceptional, next up is a very recent contender in the bounty game being the accursed Prince of Elbaf, Loki, who clocks in at a rather shocking 2.6 billion berries.
Oh my
God.
God.
This is shocking because at the time of this recording, Loki is neither a pirate or a revolutionary or any sort of criminal, at least not by world government standards. They're not considering him a traditional criminal. The Giants of Elbaf definitely are, because of all of the killing of his father he did. But this is potentially why his bounty has been identified as a, quote, special government bounty, meaning that Loki represents a very unique threat to the world as we know it, and given that his stated goal is to destroy the world, I think that's quite fair, and the world government have recognized that Loki does have a lot of substance required to back up those claims. To put Loki into a bit of perspective, he actually has a higher bounty than Blackbeard originally did when he first became an Emperor of the Sea. After Blackbeard killed Whitebeard, took his world-destroying fruit, and solidified his position as an emperor, the world government still did not see him as a threat greater than Loki. They do now, but we'll get to that. Because we are now entering the top 10 highest known bounties in the One Piece world, and we actually have an unprecedented
his backstory fucked up
for 10th place, as Monkey D. Luffy, Eustace Kid, Trafalgar Law, Fujitora, Kizaru, Green Bull, and Monkey D. Garp are all worth 3 billion berries on the dot, which officially makes 3 billion the most.
Hold on. Law is up there?
Worth 3 billion berries on the dot, which officially makes 3 billion the most common bounty number in all of One Piece. It's so common that we've actually had 2 3 billion berry individuals fight, which were Luffy and Kizaru on Egghead Island. Prior to this, 2 people with the exact same bounty had never fought, because it was almost impossible to find someone with your exact number. But Luffy, Law, and Kid all earned their 3 billion berries by joining forces to defeat Big Mom and Kaido during the raid on Onigashima, whilst our 3 admirals are valued at 3 billion by Cross Guild simply due to their rank. And Garp, well, he's a special case, as Cross Guild see him as such a large threat that Garp's name alone carries that 3 billion berry weight. It shows both respect for the hero of the Marines, but it also acknowledges that his era is over. And we are now in the era of the world being very down to clown, as surpassing Garp, the hero of the Marines and one of the strongest people to have ever lived, is Emperor of the Sea, Buggy the Clown, with 3.1.
Dude, get the fuck out of here with that shit, bro. He should not have that.
9 billion berries. And as a result, Buggy currently holds the record for single largest leap in bounty value, as his number prior to this was 15 million berries. And this leap was granted to Buggy rather intriguingly, partially through his unification of Sir Crocodile, and the next highest number on this list, Recul Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman with a bounty of 3.59 billion berries, which is a pun on his name because 359 can be read as Mikoku, the closest that we can get to Mihawk or Mihoku. But Mihawk is a very special case here because he has the highest bounty assigned to a purely individual operator. Mihawk isn't an emperor, he isn't an admiral, he has no extended forces, he has no information network, he has no allies, he has no other external factors that would usually go into casting a bounty this high. Instead, this number is assigned to Mihawk purely because of raw power alone. And so he is, almost objectively, one of the single strongest figures currently alive on this planet. And mate, it takes a lot of cherry pies to trump Mihawk's number, but this is the work that Marshall D. Teach which was willing to put into his now 3.996 billion berry bounty, which he's earned for all of the reasons, including being the primary overall antagonist of One Piece.
Bro, they setting these high-ass bounties on these strong-ass people. Ain't nobody catching these motherfuckers.
Even then, I still think he's undervalued and underestimated by the world government, and has been at every stage, which is why Blackbeard has been so consistently enabled to grow both metaphorically and physically, gaining more and more power and more pies. And he's grown so much that he's menacingly edging that 4 billion berry threshold that so few have managed to penetrate, and in fact the only modern day contender to do so is Blackbeard's fellow Emperor of the Sea, Redhead Shanks, with 4,048,900,000 berries. Again, not just a random string of numbers. With these numbers we can make Shiaku, the closest that we can get to Shanks. But given that Shanks is only 39 years old, this is a pretty monumental achievement.
39.
However, it should be said that he's also been a pirate for all 39 of those years, as he was raped by the former pirate king aboard his vessel.
What?
So the nepotism is quite strong here. And part of why Shanks is seen as such a great threat is because he's inherited a huge chunk of Roger's will and legacy, as Shanks is currently the only other known person in this world who can perform Roger's signature attack, Divine Departure. And he is widely considered to be the man closest to finding the One Piece itself and becoming the next pirate king. However, this consideration was only granted after the defeat of two previous emperors of the sea, Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, who were worth 4,388,000,000.
I think Luffy and Shanks gonna fight one day, bro.
And 4,611,800,000 berries respectively. Now Big Mom and Kaido were both former members of the Rocks Pirates, and ever since Roger's death they have more or less ruled the New World. However, their rivalry with one another is what has caused them to spend the last almost 3 decades stagnating and ultimately waiting too long to pursue their dreams and being overtaken by the current generation. Their life status is currently unknown. Both of them were blasted into magma, and traditionally not a lot of people survive that. But if anyone could, I'd say it's these two, or this next guy. In fact, definitely this next guy, who is the current high roller of this new age, being Fleet Admiral Sakazuki, who cross-skilled her valued at 5 crowns, meaning 5 billion berries, which makes Sakazuki the currently known most valuable living person in the One Piece world. I say living because there is one potential person who could eclipse him, and that would be Monkey D. Dragon, leader of the Revolutionary Army, known as the world's worst criminal, as in he's a good criminal. The best criminal, in fact, he's so good at criming that that's what makes him the worst. And there's a handful of other yet to be revealed figures who would probably crack the top 10, like Silver's Rayleigh or former Admiral Kuzan, but Dragon is the only living character with a chance of surpassing that 5 billion berry mark. Historically though, we have had 2 other people breach this number. The first is Edward Newgate, aka Whitebeard, who was once known as the strongest man in the world with 5
Why is he just calling out their government like that?
5,046,000,000 berries, and of course the legendary Pirate King himself, Goldie Roger, with 5,564,800,000 berries, which again all comes together in Gorowase to form Roshia. But there's more to it than that. Oda has been very deliberate with Roger's number, as he's left room for Luffy to ultimately surpass Roger, because Luffy's trademark number again is 56, and so it's highly suspected that by the end of the series, Luffy will be on top of this list with a bounty of 5,600,000,000 berries. But we're still a bit away from that. And for now, these are the 21 highest bounties in One Piece, held by a total of 28 people.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, that boy Luffy got a long way to go, bruh.